thwip, thwip, if only there were a bunch of cranes perfectly aligned so that I could have gotten to this Funhaus faster.
Welcome to the Funhaus verse, everybody. This week's episode is sponsored by Lisa. Their mission is to provide a better night's rest for everybody. My name is Daniel. I've got a top flight of guests with me this week. Adam Kovic.
I only watch the Mark Webb films.
Oh, no. Elise Willems.
I only watch spiders made by a certain spider writing guy, Stan Lee.
Oh.
I don't know.
James Willems.
Radioactive spider guy. That's a reference to the 90s cartoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Someone did it.
So yeah, this a week ago, we got a last second end of the year Hail Mary from Sony, who've been disappointing us with their Spider-Verse for about a decade now.
Speak for yourself and me.
And everybody else.
Continue speaking for me, too.
But so yeah, we got Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's a fresh take on the world's greatest superhero. And I think this is possibly, and we can argue about this or just all agree, but maybe the best Spider-Man movie ever?
Yeah.
If we are not counting the extended full-length first episode of the MTV version of the show.
I don't even know what that is.
Neil Patrick Harris was the voice.
And Ian
Not that
Ziering.
I've seen it.
That existed?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But this movie, it's lighthearted. It's got a really playful tone. It's super upbeat and has a very exciting, eye-popping style. So good that Sony's going to try and patent the software that they use to make the movie. But it's really fucking funny. Really, really funny. It's kind of quick and snappy with its dialogue and has a giant, big beating heart. The emotional center of the film kind of keeps it all together, keeps it from becoming a convoluted mess. And honestly, I don't want us to spoil too much of the movie, so we'll try and start off a little spoiler-free, but I just want to say go see this movie and then watch the rest of this podcast. It's pretty fucking incredible. I think everyone behind me agrees. Maybe one of the best movies of the year, coming out just 2 weeks before the end of 2018.
Absolutely. Got nominated for a Golden Globe, which is great because...
That's like a trash Oscar.
Yeah.
You can buy those, actually.
So at least it's getting some recognition, right? Which you would worry that a movie like this might get passed over.
Well, because financially it's not, at least after the first week, it didn't do well. Not that that shouldn't matter, but I only care because I felt like it deserves to do better because it's miles above.
Pun intended?
Nice job.
What?
Did you do
Miles
that on
Morales.
purpose?
No, this is a Spider-Man movie. Peter
Yeah.
Parker is Spider-Man.
Because it costs like $90 million, right?
Did it really?
I think so. And it's tracking
That's
at,
pretty
like,
expensive.
after its first week, what, like 20 or 40? I don't remember.
It was like
what.
$35 million.
Yeah.
It made 35 in America. Made a
Yeah.
little bit more overseas.
Yeah.
What was the box office? I've got that written down.
It's still opening in some markets, not
Yeah.
major ones.
This
but-
it was weird too. This is the type of movie I have wanted. I want to say since Toy Story, where I was like, oh cool, I would like to see an animated movie with some more mature themes, but still be fun and lighthearted. Like it's clearly made for kids. It is a kids movie, but as an adult, I had a great time.
Yeah, there were a
watching
bunch
this
of kids in
movie.
my theater on my row, and they were loving it. They were having a great time. And I'm talking little kids.
Yeah, it's eye candy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like it is the best parts of a Marvel movie without any real like downtime. Because even the downtime looks it's great to look at.
Yeah. It has, I mean, you mentioned the great heart. It has the great humor. It has, I think what we liked about Deadpool, aside from breaking the fourth wall, was it felt fresh and it felt like it was speaking to the audience in a way where they were like, yeah, we get it. We get it. You know Deadpool. We get it. You know this universe. And this is how this movie felt, where it was very tongue-in-cheek with references it made to different, Spider-Man
Yeah, it's meta in its own way without talking directly at the camera.
Yeah, which
like
I
Deadpool.
appreciated, because if it had talked to the camera, it would have felt like a turnoff, but the way it did it was smooth.
For anyone that doesn't know, Miles Morales is an African-American Puerto Rican teenager living in Brooklyn. He goes to this elite prep school that he kind of hates because he's an outcast and he's trying to kind of get kicked out, and spends his nights wandering the city, kind of tagging, putting up graffiti and stickers. At the beginning, there's kind of interesting emotional triangle between Miles, his father, who's a police officer, and his really cool uncle. And you can just see Miles isn't quite sure of who he is yet, and kind of struggling between those two polar opposites, which would be his father and his uncle, just trying to figure out who he is. And I think by the end of the movie, maybe knows that a little bit better. And then at some point, a little spider sneaks in and gives him spider powers.
But it's not the Peter Parker story, like, glosses over pretty quickly what it takes to become Spider-Man. Like, there's more than just the will to do good.
Yeah.
There's the ability to learn what doing good requires, and that's what most of this movie is focused on, you know? Because it's not like Miles Morales at the very beginning is like, no, I don't want to do it. You know, the Peter Parker story is he gets these powers and he uses it for the wrong reasons. Miles gets these powers, but it's also tied to, like, his puberty and him feeling like an outcast. And so it's like, well, I know that I have a talent, and I wish that I knew how to apply that talent well. I just don't, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that's going to be an upcoming problem for Marvel, with actors like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Hemsworth probably being swapped out. We've already seen in comic book versions, there's Riri, who is the Iron Heart, and then there's just Thor, female Thor, just Thor, who I believe is beloved. People seem to like. And so, like, those are two things that could potentially happen. They sort of tackle that issue here, where the movie's very much about Miles Morales, but Peter Parker is still involved. I guess, spoiler, there's a Spider-Verse.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why you see Gwen Stacy and Spider-Ham and anime Spider-Man, all that stuff.
And Nicolas Cage.
But if the movie had just said, oh, by the way, Miles Morales is the new Spider-Man, deal with it, it probably would have been a bit jarring. The movie does a really good transition.
Yeah, he's like handing off Spider-Man to this new generation.
Yeah, and this was a really good template. Not that you could ever replicate this, but it was a really good way of passing the torch on to, like, in such an iconic character.
It sounds like, I mean, from what they have greenlit, they're gonna try to replicate it a little bit, because they've said, like, Gwen Stacy's coming.
Yeah.
They're gonna get Silk and Spider Woman in on that.
Yeah, Amy Pascal last week, she produces this. She's a chief at Sony. Said that a sequel is coming that will focus on the romance between Miles and Gwen Stacy. Something that they said Lord's original script had that in there, and it just kind of got tossed out for time.
But
there was a very little bit of it in the movie.
But also in this spoiler territory, to your point of these movies, like you said, you know, Thor, like She-Thor, if you will, like taking those really done characters and kind of giving them a fresh spin. I really like Doc Ock in this movie.
Oh yeah, she's wonderful. Spoiler.
I love Kathryn Hahn, so, like, seeing her getting higher profile roles is always makes me really happy. But, like, it didn't feel like a gender swapped Doc Ock felt sandwiched in there.
Even like the whole universe, the whole Miles thing, it's not a paint by numbers, let's just make Spider-Man black.
Yeah.
It's let's take those things that make Spider-Man, those themes and motifs, and change them enough so that they're different and kind of clean, and not just putting long hair on Thor or whatever.
And I think, like, you don't need to be an Afro-Latino kid to watch this and
no.
be like, oh, that speaks to me. I think you just maybe need to be different, and you're like, okay, well, this is something new and it speaks to me. And there's, like, a definite hip-hop vibe.
Oh, yeah.
The soundtrack's incredible.
It is.
But the fact that there's, like, a whole culture that's represented in tagging and the music, the Afro-Latino background, like, there's just a whole bunch of people that I think are seeing themselves on screen in a way they never had, like Adam.
Absolutely.
Very much like the soundtrack.
Hopefully that doesn't date the movie too much. I think sometimes putting pop music in movies, 5 years from now, it'll seem old.
Or an emo haircut, brushed to one side.
Which they addressed in the movie. They had
great.
those really quick jokes that were so wonderful.
Yeah, everything in the movie felt purposeful, if that makes sense. I do have that worry of things being dated with the choice of music. I definitely feel that way about a lot of DC movies. When they're using like Suicide Squad, I feel like will be dated within a few years just because of how much it relies on the soundtrack and how just weird. In 20 years, no one will care.
But I think the difference with this movie, for me at least, is that the soundtrack is organic to the film, whereas Suicide Squad had songs from Eminem's second album in it.
Right.
Like, it had nothing to do with the movie or the tone of the movie or anything. It was just, oh, you know this. Like, this is something that is known, thus you will have a reaction to it. These are songs, I mean, people have probably heard before, but not necessarily in a mainstream setting as much as in a middle America mainstream setting, perhaps. But whether or not it becomes dated, I feel like it'll just become
Of its time.
tied to its time,
Yeah.
which is fine, you know? Like, I think that's okay.
Yeah, it never once did it feel like, hey, fellow kids, we made a Spider-Man movie. It's full of memes and pop culture. We know we got you now. It felt like it was an artistic vision, visually and from an audio perspective, that it was all there. It worked cohesively.
And it's strange because it's a project that had so many hands in it. Like, if you look at the list of like directors, there are three directors that were part of the inception of this project that then left, and then people who came in as writers that then got added. Like, it shouldn't feel as cohesive and like a passion project as it does. But I guess maybe it's you got enough people that like Spider-Man, they're gonna make a good Spider-Man.
If you were to sell me on it years ago and said, just so you know, the guys who made the Emoji Movie and the studio that brought you Venom and Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, they're gonna blow your socks off come 2018 and be like, shut up.
Yeah, but maybe if you said like, but then they asked Alex Hirsch what he thought, I'd be like, okay, all right.
Gravity Falls,
okay.
gentlemen.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh my God, Spider-Ham stole the movie.
It shouldn't have worked at all.
I'm still 50-50 on Spider-Ham.
Oh, you hate
Adam.
Yeah.
Boo.
What? Just look, it's more for you to like, I guess.
Remember when he says the thing about the smelling of delicious pie?
Oh.
Yes.
Do you float through the air when you smell a delicious pie?
Yeah.
It's so charming.
Yeah. He wore out his welcome here and there.
Not for me at all.
No,
He did
no
not.
way.
He popped in, said something to remind you how cartoony a cartoon can
And that
be,
fun
and then
exists in the
and then
world.
he left.
Yeah.
I never felt like Spider-Ham had a great payoff.
No.
Well,
I
but
think
it didn't take me out of the movie. I'll
Well,
put
I mean,
it that way.
I think there's a reason.
Sure.
The movie starts with a Peter Parker that everyone knows and everyone is familiar with. And as it slowly, because at the beginning it's not like Nicolas Cage drops in and he's black and white and then he's telling Miles Morales what to do. Like, I think they understood that wouldn't make sense. So that's why the comedy works for me, is because they understand the progression of it. It starts with something reasonable and then it moves into the absurd, and the furthest extent of that absurdity is an anime girl from the future and a pig that's a completely different style of animation that does wacky things that breaks the rules of the world.
And I know that's a throwback to an actual comic that they had. There is a Spider-Ham comic.
But it was always a joke. Like, it was a one note
I guess
joke.
that's what I was kind of hoping for, is that he'd be like, hey, nice to meet you. Oops, wrong movie. And then he leaves and go, oh, okay, that was good enough. He had a great line at the end that was only made funny by a response that Peter Parker had. But like I said, for what for me was a near perfect movie, that was the only thing that kind of only a little bit bothered me.
I don't know. The sheer fact that his name is Peter Porker.
That's all she
I mean,
Also,
stitches.
that he was a spider bitten by a pig. People often forget that too.
Was it really?
Yeah.
He was a spider.
He's
He was
so
a pet
cute.
spider.
That's pretty wonderful.
Of May Porker. And she bit him, and then he became a pig.
Funnier when you explain it.
A spider
than-
with the strength of a pig.
You weren't in the mood for bovine humor when this happened. I can tell.
Well,
'cause-
and I think one of the reasons.
I mean, bovine's a cow. I didn't
what's
mean
the-
that. A
Swine?
Swine. Yeah, you were in the mood for some swine shindig. You know,
It's almost alliteration.
you wanted. You said, "Give me more of that."
I said, give me some more Gwen Stacy. Give me some more Spider-Man Noir. Give me some more of that character we saw at the end credits.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I wanted.
You guys
Talk about-
stay to the very, very end.
Hold your horses. We're watching clips right now, and they're showing Times Square. And that was my favorite thing about this movie was all
the background
posters
posters?
for Hold Your Horses, starring Seth Rogen.
And then there's like John Mulaney
From Dusk Till Dawn.
Instead of Blue
Yeah.
Man Group, it's Red Man Group.
From Dusk Till Shaun was supposed to be like the sequel to Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They got Planet Inglewood.
If they had made a sequel, that's
So,
what.
wait,
it was
what do they
gonna
call
be.
the weekend in there? Kiss End. I
Where is
forget. The under the Sony logo. That it's very much the Weeknd album art. Yeah.
Kissland?
Yeah. It was
Anyway.
It was fun to see
There's a lot of fun stuff.
the alternate universe things that they did.
Yeah, so this movie does have a really great message, like one of inclusion. And I think the tagline is pretty brilliant on a lot of the posters. It's anyone can wear the mask. And I think that matters a lot in our modern world. And the movie overall nailed that message, especially to the theater I was in. There was a lot of different kinds of people there, and everyone was digging it. I don't know. Powerful film.
Yeah. Well, it's the same guys behind. I know they weren't responsible for 100% of it, but Phil Lord, Chris Miller,
Yeah.
Clone High, Lego Movie, Cloud of Chance Meatballs. They've done a lot of really good movies that are entertaining but still have a real kind of fun, positive message.
That is one thing that worries me about that sequel we were talking about. Phil Lord's not attached to it. It's got the director of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Voltron and the writer of Wonder Woman 1984. So we're missing that Lord. And what was the guy's name from Gravity Falls?
Alex Hirsch.
Missing a few of the talents that I think made this movie special.
Alex
but
Hirsch was he a writer?
I don't know if he
think he wrote
I
on
think
it.
how much he did.
Rodney.
He was like a consultant,
Yeah.
or
I
I think
don't
they brought
think-
him on as like
yeah,
a producer.
I don't think he was.
okay.
I don't know. He was available. This movie, the details about this movie leaked in 2014
This
in
movie?
the Sony leak. Yeah,
Yeah.
He got hit with a bagel and it said bagel.
Yeah.
there's a lot of those moments.
This is
fucking great.
Well, here's the thing too. So tired of superhero origin stories. We're past it. But they figured out a new way to tell the origin story.
Yeah.
But do it in an interesting way, so that way if you've been down this road 100 times, you're not going to be bored seeing it again. And if you're completely unfamiliar with the character, it'll still totally work out because you'll learn about this character, but nothing is so far-fetched that you have to be like a comic book nerd to like really get it or whatever.
Well, and I think they play with that knowledge that you have of origins, and there's a really cool device. Kind of every time they introduce a new Spider-Man, that person does a monologue for 30 seconds, showing the way they became Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderfully done. Kind of frames the movie, and it helps you make sense of all these new characters that are showing up.
Aunt May was cool.
A badass Aunt May.
Though, did you guys pick up on like when Doc Ock shows up and she's like, "Hello, Liv," and it's like, "Oh,
Really?
those are by her first name."
Because I guess in
Huh?
old Spider-Man, Doc Ock and Aunt May got married at some point.
Yeah.
mean,
So is that what
the
that's
comics have been
alluding
around
to?
for 85
maybe there was
years.
a little,
so-
maybe there was a little maybe Aunt May swing both ways. You know what I'm saying?
That was something I know people picked up on. I think James, you talked about it a little bit too, but Aunt May wasn't lame.
Oh no, yeah.
Aunt May is always going in the current iteration, I guess, that we're familiar with, the Raimi films, fragile old woman.
Yeah.
And then slightly less fragile in the Mark Webb ones, and then to just being kind of a hot MILF in the current iteration, to actually being purposeful.
Yeah.
In this
Yeah.
one, instead of just being I hope Aunt May doesn't find out.
And great casting, because like Lily Tomlin as Aunt May, you have a character like Aunt May where you're like, oh, she's this biting, tough as nails old woman, and you're like, okay, that's kind of a diamond in the rough. But I believe that from Lily Tomlin,
Oh, yeah.
who her entire career has been a biting,
Yeah, she sounds
witty,
tough as nails.
woman. But yeah, the casting was like great all across the board, in my opinion.
Agreed.
It was really good voice acting.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it was I couldn't tell who the actors were.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick Cage bothered me for a minute when I didn't know he was Spider-Man Noir. Like, hearing a
You know the
voice
voice.
you recognize
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
being able to place it takes me out of the movie for just
Okay.
a moment.
It felt very much like they did performance capture and
yeah.
then they actually animated it. Like, you see the old like Alice in Wonderland Disney movies and they're like, oh, well, they did film a little girl doing all those things. But then they went and they turned it into a cartoon as opposed to a, Polar Express direct translation into Nightmare kind of thing. But so it's like when they're reacting or when they're speaking, it feels very, very,
Natural.
yeah, it feels natural. It doesn't feel that cartoony, except it's still very cartoony. It's the difference between a ball bouncing and not squishing at the bottom, and then a ball squishing at the bottom.
It,
I don't know.
It felt like the kind of dialogue you'd get in like an Aaron Sorkin film, like a Social Network type, but without being so condescending. Everything felt light and fun. So like, there's a really great moment where Peter Parker is talking to Miles, and he's going a mile a minute, and almost within that own sentence, he goes, "Do I want kids?" And then just keeps moving. Like,
Yeah.
it's that sort of like blink and you'll miss it sort of humor, which I thought was fantastic. And like, I want to go see it again because I feel like I actually miss some stuff because so much was going on.
It was super fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a movie that will reward rewatching a couple of times.
I'm going to go see it again.
Yeah, I'm going to see it again.
James already bought it.
Oh, I was going to buy it, but it's only available pre-order in HD. This might be something that's worth getting in
4K.
Sometimes I've noticed that sometimes when I go to see movies I really like, I'll go onto Google Play and then I'll just buy them.
I'm excited for Dawn because this is the first movie in however long that I've actually considered that I may have wanted to have seen it in 3D. And Dawn buys like 3D Blu-rays still, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna love getting this. Best day of Dawn's life. I call it.
Are we going to follow up on that?
What percentage of your day do you go through thinking whether Dawn would like something or not?
Dawn deserves everything in the world.
Oh.
What a strange statement.
This is a precious man.
Anyway, leave Schreiber as Kingpin really really blew me away.
I think so.
That's where we ended.
I can't believe he went from Sabretooth to Kingpin of all his comic roles.
I liked the little bit of explanation, the motivation that they had for Kingpin with his wife and son.
Yeah, I like that too.
Which I couldn't recall there being something that concrete about Kingpin in any other version of Kingpin. I've read a little bit of Miles Morales, but I haven't read that much. So like certain things like the Hispanic Scorpion and Doc Ock, how they appear in this, being a little different than you're used to seeing. I was like, is that how it is in this comic book universe? And it's just used that way in the film. But I just was like, I appreciate it because Kingpin is, man, one of those characters when you're like, all right, and the villain of this will be Kingpin, and I just let out the longest sigh. Like
they tried a little bit with Daredevil season 1, where like he and Daredevil were sort of the flip of each other in a kind of a good way, where this blind guy's going to beat people up to make the streets better, whereas Kingpin's going to buy up the city and make it better. So they both have the same goal. They just had different motivations behind it.
I think Kingpin, one thing I like about Kingpin is he's always an excuse for the rogues gallery. Like, he's not going to start out punching at Spider-Man. He's going to get other goons around him to attack him. So that's why you get, Tombstone and Scorpion and well, I feel like there was another one I'm missing out, but Prowler. There you go.
Yeah. Prowler was so cool.
Did you guys notice that music, his theme?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it got
really
me every
cool.
time.
That was
scary.
That was the thing I was going to say. If you do or you haven't, or you're going to go see it again, I was lucky enough to see this movie in a Dolby theater. That's one of those ones that it's supposed to have like the best audio quality if you can find one of those. But like the seats shook every time the music kicked in, like the bass kicked in at like a heavy level, and that Prowler theme.
So cool.
It's just like it made you perk up. It was so well, and that might just be the movie. The movie might just have really good sound design, but that was one thing I noticed. It was just like I said, like top to bottom, everything about the movie, visually, auditorially, damn good movie. Go see it.
Let me ask you a quick question, Elise. Did you get a good night's rest last night?
You know what, Dan? I didn't.
Oh no.
No, I didn't. It's my bed. It stinks.
A quality night's sleep helps you recover from distractions faster, prevent burnout, make better decisions, improve your memory, and overall make fewer mistakes. It's not marketing, it's science. To design a better mattress, Lisa leveraged 30 plus years of experience and hundreds of hours of testing, science, to develop a perfect mattress for all body shapes and sleeping styles. Lisa's mission is to provide a better night's rest for everybody. Through their 110 program, they donate one mattress for every 10 they sell. That's more than 31,000 mattresses and counting. Lisa strives to leave the world better than they found it, but that doesn't stop with mattress donations. Together with the Arbor Day Foundation, Lisa plants one tree for every mattress they sell. Give yourself a gift of a better night's rest this holiday. Get $160 off a Lisa mattress at lisa.com/filmhouse and use promo code filmhouse at checkout. That's LEESA.com/filmhouse filmhaus and use the promo code Filmhouse. So thanks, Lisa, for bringing us here today to talk about Spider-Mans. So were there any nitpicks or things you guys didn't like about the movie? Because it's pretty close to perfect.
It is close to perfect.
Yeah.
You know, I said this to everyone here, but like when this is a spoiler, when all of the spider people are giving sort of the catalytic event that caused them to say, yes, I want to fight for justice and good, whatever tragic moment, whoever they lost, and they all give it except for Spider-Ham, who just like says something very poetic and poignant. I wanted to know what Spider-Ham's like tragic life-changing event was, but then part of me thought like, or I wanted him to say something funny. Like, it was a windy day and I lost my favorite umbrella, you know? Or, but then I thought about it and I was like, maybe Spider-Ham has like the worst fucking thing, like Monica Bellucci irreversible something, happened to Spider-Ham. And that also kind of made me be like, oh, maybe there's something terrible.
I couldn't find anything.
There's nothing.
In his backstory.
Not really.
So, in Spider-Ham's backstory?
Yeah.
That touches on one minor issue I had with the movie was that, both Aunt May and Gwen had Peter Parkers die, and they didn't really react when Peter Parker was in front of them.
What?
Like, so you have other universe Peter Parker in front of you. It's this guy, he's either your nephew or your, I guess, love interest or good friend in Gwen's part. But they didn't necessarily react at all to seeing this guy that they love.
So here's...
Especially considering Peter freaked out when he saw MJ.
I was going to say, he did. There's one line, when Peter sees MJ, there's one line from Gwen Stacy where she says, Peter, like, trust me, I know how it feels. And I thought maybe they were going to do something with that because obviously, like, she's looking at him as he's looking at MJ and she's thinking, this is the guy that died that I was in love with or whatever, right? That I tried to save and I couldn't. But they didn't. And I was like, oh. Okay.
I thought a couple things. The Aunt May situation felt like she had already... Well, one, this is a universe where Aunt May and Mary Jane know Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he goes out and he does a good thing, and they do everything they can to support his mission to protect innocent people and everything like that. So it felt like that Aunt May would more better come to terms with the reality and the risks associated with what he puts himself through every single day. And also, we've already established that she's like an Alfred. She's cool and calculated, and she's part of this world. She knows what's up. And so that coupled with that Peter Parker wasn't the first Peter Parker to come to them. Like, when they arrive, there's already this other stuff going on. So I think she could have easily prepared herself for, at any moment, another version of Peter is going to show up at my door.
I forget that she takes him into the underground lair, and then she goes, there's also 3 other weird iterations. But they did a really good job of setting up first Peter Parker, Chris Pine Peter Parker. He's 26, he's young, he's got his life together, everything's great. He dies, which I didn't know that was happening in the story. And so they did a really smart thing where they killed off the best version of Spider-Man.
Blonde Spider-Man?
Like Spider-Man Prime, basically the one they try to do in the video game. Where it's like, this is him in his prime. He's the best he's ever going to be at this time, and he's dead. He's gone now. So now we have this sad, broken Spider-Man who's far more interesting
Oh my God.
as a character.
Extremely interesting.
And so they did a smart thing by, one, aging him and making him sadder, fatter, and a different color hair. So then that way, if Aunt May had saw a younger blonde version of her lost son or nephew, she would go like, "Oh my God!" But when she sees the old sad man, not as much of a reaction. I think that makes it a bit more believable.
Which I think is the same situation for Gwen, because her Peter Parker was,
a teenager,
16 years old, and a dweeb, and so like seeing this if you think of someone from your childhood and you were like, if this person was completely removed from my life, and then I saw them. An older, like 30-something-year-old version of them that barely bore resemblance. Even though their name was Peter Parker, I'd be like, oh, that's weird, but I'm not necessarily emotional.
Minor gripe.
Well, it's unfounded.
I also rather than Aunt May like seeing him and blubbering and going, Peter, is that you? I liked that, like, no, she's an engineer and she's practically a scientist in her own right, and she's savvy. She knows there's a multiverse, so when she sees this guy that isn't her Peter, like Aunt May's 2 steps ahead.
Yeah.
She's always 2 steps ahead
Oh,
in
yeah, I guess
everything,
it's a
which I
symptom.
liked.
Because she and Octavia.
Yeah, they were both scientists.
Were scientists
and had
together.
A lab that they shared, and only like one bed, because that's all they could afford as poor scientists.
Yeah.
I guess that
Like a
maybe
twin
is
bed?
that's part of
Yeah.
Broken Peter, that he
Like a
still is
swing.
going after MJ.
Hanging from it.
Sorry, what?
It's
What?
all right. I just the old man broke hobo Peter Parker in sweatpants was amazing.
Yeah.
Extremely funny, and
Also-
I guess that's a part of his depth, that he isn't emotionally stable enough to deal with seeing MJ again, whereas someone like Aunt May and even young Gwen Stacy can be more emotionally mature than he is.
Well, yeah,
this is so great.
Well,
It's about closure and stuff
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
right? He doesn't have any closure with her because he just kind of walked away from the situation when it got too difficult. But this world Spider-Man and all the people around him, they have it all figured out. They have a system in place, which is why they're so far ahead of the game of every other Spider-Man in the universes.
Yeah, this is where sad Spider-Man. They did a really smart setup too, where when Miles first meets Spider-Man Prime, Chris Prime, he does the thing real quick. He goes, "Oh, you're like me. I'll train you. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. Just got to do this thing real quick." He's dead. So now we get old man Spider-Man. He's like, "Well, you got to train him." He's like, "Why would I train you?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made it so much more interesting, and it's the same story that has been told a million times, but it was done in a really cool way. That, like James said, it didn't make the origin story feel tired. It was a really smart way of doing it, and I'm really fucking bummed the movie didn't do better in the first weekend. But I really hope word of mouth gets around. At least I went to a showing on a Monday night, like 7:15. Theater was packed, so
yeah.
I'm hoping this is one of those movies that has legs. Even though, I guess maybe we don't need any more superhero movies, but this one was so damn good. It might be the best superhero movie.
Yeah.
I was
made.
trying to decide if I liked it more than Infinity War, and it's close. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I like it more than Infinity War, only because it stands on its own.
Yeah. And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's not as dark.
Infinity War requires 20 movies before it to make it as good as it is.
I definitely like it more than Infinity War. I don't know if I like it more than Thor Ragnarok, though, because I think that movie's better than Infinity
It also
War.
has a fun, playful tone,
Yeah. It's just so fresh.
and has Jeff Goldblum.
Some movies relish the genre and the characters that fill them. Other movies are Venom.
Same studio, man. Someone at the top stamped the same two papers and said yes and yes.
It's because they just said a Spider-Man movie, okay. A Venom movie, okay. But then the people who are doing the Venom movie were just like, we have deadlines and we have to come in under budget.
Who cares?
Seth Rogen of
Hold Your Horses.
Hold Your Horses fame, he made a tweet today that was like, we should hold the Academy Awards 5 years after the movie comes out, because I feel like that's how much time you need to actually really know if a movie's good.
To see if it
Yeah.
resonates.
And I think that does apply to this, though. Man, if this doesn't win any, I hope it recoups its budget, but I think it will have a longer life when it comes to like video on demand and stuff. Because
I'm still riding the high, but I felt like when I left the theater in my conversation with Jess, we were driving back, I'm like, I feel like we peaked. I think this is where the superhero genre in its perfect mix of popcorn and sentimental feelings, where it's not artsy, but at the same time doesn't feel overly commercial. Even though there's FedEx and Sony logos everywhere in every scene, but that didn't take away from the film. To me, it was this perfect mix of art and commercial of what I love in films and movies.
I'm going to put this out here too. Spoiler. Favorite Stan Lee cameo.
Oh, man.
That was
I got a little
heartbreaking.
misty-eyed
Favorite
when
Stan
that
Lee
happened.
cameo, not just because he's dead, but because it had a purpose. There was a reason that he should be the one to share that knowledge and appear in that sequence and say those things, and it was important to the plot, and it wasn't just him going, wow, like,
Well, and he was also doing what Stan Lee did, which he's like a salesman. He's like a huckster.
Yeah.
Right? It was very much Stan Lee.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just the style of this movie just blew me away. The, uses kind of the offset printing and the Ben-Day dots and just there's so much going on. Speed lines and thought bubbles. This is the most comic booky looking film, I guess, since Scott Pilgrim, maybe. And it is miles above. I love Scott Pilgrim, but this is miles above that.
There's so much texture.
Yeah, I know.
It's so dense.
They to blur backgrounds or foregrounds, they would offset things, which I hear a lot of people, and I even thought they weren't wearing their 3D glasses or something like that. But just really neat effects. Visually, I don't know. I see a lot of movies trying to do this, or TV shows maybe trying to replicate this look.
Yeah.
It felt like I was watching a comic book. It was the perfect mix. That's what I was saying when I was younger and I saw Toy Story, and I was like, oh, I can't wait for other people to make Pixar level quality movies. This is what I've been waiting for.
Oh yeah, when Disney acquired Marvel, I was like, hey, Pixar Spider-Man could be the greatest movie ever, but I don't know if Pixar could make a better movie than Sony did here. Maybe?
That's rough. They would just have Ron Howard come in halfway through and fix it anyway, so who knows?
He wouldn't have the edge.
I'm happy.
You think Ron Howard
Brave.
don't got the edge?
Bold and
This
brave.
movie is it's so edgy. It's fresh. And
Was
he's
it
not.
edgy?
He's not.
I just felt it was self-aware, which
Ron
I guess you
Howard,
can do
I mean,
with animation.
It's
a little
genre edgy.
Ron Howard
It took
listens to the
risks.
hip hop.
Yeah.
He can.
He bought a OMC album once in a blue moon.
He loves that whistle song.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, on one hand, I want this to be a series and something to keep going, but then at the same time, if you can't live up to this one, maybe just stop.
Don't fuck it
It
up.
exists. That's all you have to be
I'm
grateful
really happy
for.
it exists. I'm glad it does, and
And we have Secret Life of Pets 2 coming out soon, so that'll be nice. It's always nice to have an Illumination trailer in front of this masterpiece.
I guess if any of the animators, Sony or otherwise, any who was outsourced, you guys fucking killed it.
Yeah.
It really looks like people put their heart and their soul into this thing. Like it felt like you do the shit work, which is like Emoji Movie, so that you can do this
Or
and
Aquaman.
make art.
It's just a bunch
Where
of
does
people.
Aquaman
I
fall?
talked to someone that worked on Aquaman, and she was incredibly proud of it, and I was incredibly proud to hear that she was incredibly proud, and we were prideful of one another in this movie that's
Sinner.
we're going to see soon.
I mean, Dan and
Yeah,
I are seeing it tonight.
Check
so-
in
I
on
know.
Aqua Watch. Are you still excited, Elise?
Absolutely. Into the Spider-Verse has only steeled my resolve that Aquaman will be a movie of a generation.
I actually say go see this twice before. I haven't even seen Aquaman yet, but
No,
go see this
Aquaman
again.
first, and then see.
You hush.
If you've got some pennies left over, throw them at this atrocity.
Do you think this is super spoiler territory? Do you think the ending of this movie, the post-credit scene, is what they're teasing at next, doing a 2040 or 2099?
Yes. Well, no, I think they're teasing at having the control over being able to go
Use any Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
they're like anything's possible.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious. I liked what they did. I know it was meme humor, but the part at the end of the two
was so
Spider-Mans
good.
pointing at each other was so damn good.
Yeah.
Getting Oscar Isaac for whatever reason to be
For
to be
one day.
Miguel.
So good.
So damn good.
Usually memes in movies are awful too.
I was gonna say that's a testament to this movie that there is a meme in it, and it is a highlight.
Yeah.
It is a highlight.
Well,
Stayed at the end of those credits.
also spoiler, I would say that like him walking down the street at the beginning doing the finger guns is practically meme territory.
Yeah.
But it was weird because like when I saw that, I knew the movie was going to be okay. Like
When it
that was like a
recognizes
cradling comfort thing where I went, oh, okay, they like get it, and then, yeah, it was great.
There's a brief shot right in the post-credits where he's sitting at the desk. I wasn't crazy. Okay. There's the other.
No,
I was trying to think of anything that has more memes than the Spider-Man cartoon from the 60s. Like anytime it's always like, sexy Spider-Man laying on the train tracks or anything like that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a quick death shot, and then they did the part at the end, which I thought was great. But it was a good way of being relevant without being annoying. I felt
it wasn't patronizing.
Yeah, it felt self-aware. It knows it's a Spider-Man movie, but also knows it doesn't have to take itself too seriously. It felt like Clone High. It felt like it had that Chris Lord and what's his
Nailed
name?
it.
Sorry,
Nailed it.
Chris Miller and
Phil Lord.
Phil Lord, yeah.
Chris
They're-
Lord.
They're
Lord Miller.
Lorton Ballard Bull.
So I have one question.
Yeah.
Did the spider just kind of come out of nowhere, or did it come from another dimension?
Universe 42
Yeah.
had the number 42 on it,
Okay.
Yeah. And also,
which I think is
Movie details. The first time Miles tries to swing, he crashes into an address and all the numbers fall off. And it's a 4 and a 2. Those are the numbers that fall around him on the ground.
Yeah, I didn't know. I don't know if that's a Hitchhiker's thing or that was like Dimension 42 is where it came from.
everything associated with the whatever the company was, the brand.
Oh, yeah.
I forget their name.
Amber-
Acer Mex or whatever. Yeah, I
like
think they make
everything said
CD-ROMs.
42 on it. So I think the idea was that there was a leak. Then it came through because everyone came through at different times.
Yeah.
Which I thought was.
So it did come from a different.
Yeah, I
universe.
mean
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was my
Okay.
assumption that
There-
it was probably from the world that will be more explored
Yeah.
in the sequel.
Gotcha.
Where
There's
you have control over that stuff.
Well, remember, Gwen Stacy got there early. She had been there already for a little bit. And then in the very beginning, when Miles is going to school, like, do you feel that earthquake last night? So, like, they've been doing this, the tests sort of stuff. And then that tunnel that or his uncle takes him to. I guess we're
Yeah.
doing spoilers. Doesn't really matter.
That's the end of the podcast.
Yeah, that was my assumption, was that was a spider that came from the 2099 universe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that I don't need that explained to me, I guess.
I don't either. I was just curious
Yeah.
if I didn't pick up on something. But so what, this is, super spoilers. We're past that. I hope
Yeah.
you've turned this off by now if you're worried about spoiling this. But the Prowler reveal, I fucking love. It's something that makes Miles a different Spider-Man than Peter Parker, and really intense to have this guy who he idolizes his uncle, right? And he turns out to be the guy that's hunting him down that he's been running from. So good. So good.
Yeah, it was obvious, I thought. It wasn't like a big gotcha moment, but it still had an impact.
That being said, it wasn't until he took off his mask that someone in the theater went, "It's his uncle."
I actually knew nothing about Prowler, and then I think I saw this trailer, and stupid me for reading the comments, like, oh, cool. I wonder if Prowler's going to be his uncle like he is in the comics. I went,
Oh.
fuck you.
You ruined it for yourself.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if that's obvious for someone that doesn't know. Like when you know that's going to happen, it's hard to know whether or not it's.
His design, like I said, I don't know anything about Prowler as a character, but his design and the sound work that they put behind him and everything, like the way he moved, everything was awesome.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the way they used him as a character.
You do know that if you match an enemy fortified tile as Prowler, he
He'll
will
take
steal
it.
the
Yes.
That's all the time we have for this week.
Yeah, I think
like
now that
Deadpool.
it's Puzzle Quest talk, that's the end of the show, everybody.
They added 5-star Kingpin. He's from Spider-Verse.
Go see this movie.
Stop him, guys.
Honestly, this and Roma, the best movies I've seen this year.
Miss you,
Roma's on
Matt
Netflix.
Webb.
Paddington 2, it receives the highest honor I can give, the Paddington 2 Award for Excellence.
And that is judged by you going home and seeing how quickly you can buy it to watch it 6 months from now.
Yes.
I'll watch it again.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to go. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Dan, for letting us talk about Spider-Man.
Yeah, man.
Ant-Man?
The European small town detective mystery is like my
Best
my
genre?
favorite genre.
Yeah.
I
Everyone's got a
love
secret.
it. I love it. James is always like, another one? I'm like, yes.
Always starts with some sort of woman or child dying.
Crying. Yeah, and then someone's crying. Oh.
I still do believe, though, Netflix is quantity over quality, whereas HBO is still quality over quantity.